Hello, you handsome devils. This is ArcSam, and today I'm going to try to highlight game with overlords. As it turns out, there's going to be a patch on the 10th of August, buffing these units incredibly high, essentially buffing every single thing that's relevant about them. And here I'm going to try to see what they can do before all of these massive buffs. Now, my personal opinion is that overlords are not a particularly good unit. They have very little health, are about as expensive as a fortress, can easily be shot down by a level 1 marksman, are generally inconsistent damage-wise, as their missile-based attack can in fact miss and can be intercepted, but that will not matter today. Today, I just want to see if these units can shine, and so I picked up Aerial Specialist. With the extra 10 range and the fact that I do not need to pay for the unlock cost, I'm very confident in actually making use of these overlords. Now, this round though, my opponent is playing some Rhino Specialists, and my initial setup gave me an advantage because my ball is connected with the sledge tanks and my arc light cleared out all the chaff. Really good. Early damage is nice, especially early tempo and levels. I notice the intensive trading, but I also see the subsidized storm colors. I think that the subsidized storm colors are a little bit too good to pass up. The tempo generated by just having access to cheap storm colors is a little bit too good to avoid in the early game, so I position them so that they can help out my arc lights and clearing everything out. Now, of course, I fully understand that our game plan entirely revolves around getting some very specific cards, or just put it that way. Overlords, as I mentioned, are not particularly good, even though a lot of people would say otherwise. In fact, I would quote HIGHroll on this, and I'll actually put his channel link in the description. HIGHroll has essentially said that the overlords are some of the highest DPS units in the game, if not the highest DPS units in the game. If you avoid things like the melters and steel balls who have ramping damage, the sheer output of both area of effect and single target damage on overlords is definitely something very enticing. And you actually might have noticed how easily overlords pierce shields, how easy it is for overlords to destroy, and I do mean destroy, ground units, assuming they don't get focused. Now this round, my opponent did something very rude. They noticed that I don't have any anti-air and did spec into Phoenixes. But here's the catch. I'm an aerial specialist. My Phoenixes are always going to be better than theirs. So as much as they did win this round, these Phoenixes, in the long run, these Phoenixes are going to be a detriment to my opponent, as I just need to put down my own Phoenixes and they will kill the opposing ones. Now I did pick up a supply specialist. It's relatively early in the game. That card is still relevant, and the extra resources will provide a lot of value. Now the thing is, my opponent is playing Rhino Specialist, so I'm even more incentivized into Phoenixes, as Phoenixes are a decent pseudo counter to Rhinos. Rhinos obviously cannot hit up, and Phoenixes do provide a decent amount of single target damage, and I am very interested in killing said Rhinos from the air and not having to essentially risk my own units. And I also have the steel balls, which are currently connecting with that rhino. But I also notice it's a level 3 rhino. Wait, that means that our opponent picked up that intensive training from earlier and is currently investing heavily into that rhino in order to rush me down and essentially put me into a position where I have to respect that rhino. And not just that, they're gonna use it as a meat shield because it currently has an extra energy shield. So I'm basically eating through double the health than I would normally go through. Now, another cute little thing this game is that there's some spectators. Spectators are betting against and for me, and I am more than welcoming that kind of behavior. I love when people watch my games and decide, wait, am I gonna lose? Am I gonna win? And I'm gonna be here sitting, grinning ear to ear, just salivating at the idea that these players are gonna feel validated when either I do win or lose. Now, we do pick up one very big key upgrade in our cards, Senior Manufacturing Specialist. This makes our very expensive overlords cheaper by 50. An incredible upgrade, especially considering our gameplay does line up with what our opponent is doing. Our opponent is currently investing into that rhino on the left a lot, and I'm assuming there might be some more rhinos. Overlords are not perfect against enemy phoenixes, but my own phoenixes can definitely protect me from that issue. It shouldn't be that much of a risk, let's just put it that way. And I'm looking forward to building up some overlords. But I also understand that I'm probably going to be losing this game, or specifically this round, as I realize, oh wait, my opponent picked up Whirlwind, and my steel balls don't have enough range to avoid it, and they do get one shot by what is now a level 4 rhino. Oof. If I had to absolutely deal with that rhino with steel balls, we'll definitely get some extra range on them so that they don't get one shot that way. But I'm confident that that's not going to be an issue just about yet. We can definitely delay the issue and essentially invest into overlords, which can also help kill this raid boss of a rhino. But we hit the absolute nuts. Mass-produced overlords is exactly what I want. Now, the range, attack, and health decrease is definitely something that I prefer to ignore, but the cost efficiency is just too high. We essentially are buying 3 giant units for the cost of a few phoenixes, and that is just too much value to pass up. And honestly, this is probably the best setup I could have ever hoped to showcase overlords. Now, something that I originally didn't understand very well, but now do actually understand better, is why a lot of people that do play overlords consistently actually get mobile beacons. Overlords aren't exactly the best unit when it comes to just being a stationary DPS dealing target. We do want to leverage the health of these units and the speed of these units, especially the speed. Unlike most giants, overlords actually do have a decent amount of speed, and because they're flying, they can actually ignore certain targets. So I definitely want to make use of that and essentially get these overlords working on the enemy towers as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, as you can probably notice, that rhino got deleted. The extra DPS from the overlord as well as the phoenixes help out a lot, and I'm definitely taking advantage of that fact as much as I can. Now we do win the round, and we finally find ranged specialist. Now I also see in the same pick Ion Blast, and I kind of just sigh to myself, understanding that I will lose my entire flank to this one skill. Overlords are flying units, which is actually a massive issue when it comes to certain skills, in particular Ion Blast, because you can't protect them with an energy shield. Since they're flying, they will be over the energy shield and you can't really do anything about it. So my only hope is that even though I do lose a big portion of my army, my attempt to flank my opponent on the right is going to be enough to delay or at least generate a little bit of value so that I don't immediately die this round. Now, granted, my opponent doesn't have enough units for that, but all they need is just to invest heavier into these phoenixes or rhinos to change that fact. I'm just gonna accept the loss and move on. Now, one thing that my opponent does do here, and I find particularly smart, is that my opponent went with underground crawlers. Underground crawlers are generally not something you see very often, but in this case is very relevant. As it turns out, I mentioned it already, but the Overlord's attacks can miss because they are a missile-based attack, and those have a impact delay as well as an area of effect. So in a similar way in how Stormcallers can miss their targets, Overlords will as well. And crawlers with underground actually have enough speed to distract the Overlord's attack while basically not taking a lot of damage, while also just being a nuisance and not allowing these Overlords to hit targets that matter. As expected, our opponent did in fact Ion Blast us, we lost our flank, and now we just take a massive boatload of damage. This round I see extended range Phoenix and I definitely want to pick that up. Tank production line would be good and nano repair kit would also be good, but none of those are particularly relevant for the game plan I have, because we are going with Launcher Overload. Now a little thing here, this skill is going to get buffed. In fact, the other skill that I have on my Overlords currently is also going to get buffed. The repair or field maintenance is going to give you an extra 30% health, which is a big deal. Currently, it just provides regen and nothing else. My current idea is that despite the fact that I am incredibly nerfing my range from my Overlords by 20, I can still compensate via the fact that I'm an air specialist and I also have a range specialist. So actually I still technically have a lot of extra range even with the mass-produced Overlord card being in effect. I also invest into this melter, understanding that this rhino is going to keep being an absolute issue going forward. Hopefully a level 1 melter with a leech can connect with that rhino and essentially kill it. One of the nice things with the melters is that if they have leech and they do in fact connect with a large health target like this rhino who's currently level 6, they are virtually immortal, because between the ramping damage of the melter and the leech that it provides, the effective health of that melter is ridiculously high. However, if the damage is nerfed or the leech is removed, like for instance when a tower is killed or when they are electrically interfered with, that no longer remains the case. That being said, Although our melter did connect with the Rhino very late, it still delayed the game just long enough for my overlords to flank and kill the tower, resulting in a wipe. Now, the thing here is that my phoenixes are currently one-shotting my opponent phoenixes with all the extra range that I have. Meaning, as I mentioned in the early part of the game, the investment my opponent had into their phoenixes wasn't going to pay off nearly as well as they thought. But this round is going to be the last one. Regardless of if I win or lose, someone is going to die here. And so I invest into the overlords once more, giving them all the range I taken away from them back, with some extra added onto it. And now these overlords are probably going to be able to wipe out the rest of what my opponent army is trying to do. And I also put some very important strategic missiles in key spots. I put a missile to remove the crawlers on the left so that my phoenixes can immediately start shooting my opponent's phoenixes. I put another missile just in the face of that rhino up there. You're gonna see that in a few seconds from here, so that I can slow down that rhino and give all my units enough time to, one, DPS down that rhino, but also handle whatever nonsense is going to be faster than a rhino, thus making sure that my melter always connects with that rhino and provides the value it was intended. And finally, I use that mobile beacon to make sure that my overlords actually do connect with the tower and survive the round, dealing the extra damage I need to kill my opponent. Now, something you may notice that we don't have a lot of chaff. The battlefield is currently not very rich with targets, but we just barely have enough meat everywhere so that things are delayed and don't immediately attack our tower. Our opponent did invest into Mustangs, definitely notice that now, but Mustangs against extra range overlords is not like ideal. The area of effect from the overlords do deal very well with the Mustangs, but the Mustangs do pair up very well against my phoenixes. And now that everything on the ground was cleared up, in no small part thanks to these overlords, I can finally get into an air battle where I know I will win thanks to my phoenixes having more range. This has been ArcSam. Stay safe, commanders, and I am out.